like we said, today we would get straight into the first hadith of the Arba'in An-Nawawi, inshaAllah ta'ala. So I'll ask Sheikh Sulaiman to read the hadith, the first hadith in the Arba'in An-Nawawi. Sheikh Sulaiman.
كان هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته لدنيا يصيبها فهجرته
أو امرأة ينكحها
فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه.
نعم.
رواه البخاري ومسلم.
نعم. Don't worry, I'm not asking everyone. I can see the way people are looking at me. I just need one person to read, inshallah. The rest of you, I'll ask you next week, inshallah. I think by next week it should be firm in your hearts, inshallah. Yeah, I can see the way he's looking at me. So he says, عن أمير المؤمنين أبي حفص عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته لدنيا يصيبها أو امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. This hadith is narrated by the commander of the believers, or the leader of the believers, Abi Hafs. I said last time, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu is called Abu Hafs. Abu Hafs, Abu something is called kunya in Arabic, where you call someone by the name of their child. If you have a child called Muhammad, we call you Abu Muhammad. If you have a child called Yusuf, we call you Abu Yusuf. However, what is surprising is that Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second Khalifa of Islam, radiyallahu anhu, did not have a child called Hafs, but he was called Abu Hafs, and this is very common. Some people may not have a child called by a particular name, and they'll be given a kunya of a child they do not have. I gave examples. Can you give us an example of someone who was called by a kunya of a child that he never had? Sheikh Hassan? Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr, the father of Bakr. But did he have a son called Bakr? No, he didn't. Anyone else with a kunya of a child that he never had? Abu Zakaria. Abu Zakaria is Imam An-Nawawi, the author of this book. He was called Abu Zakaria, and yet he didn't have a child called Zakaria, and I mentioned last time that actually he never got married. Rahimahullah. We also have, who else? A kunya, sorry. Yeah, Abu Huraira. Abu Huraira didn't have a child called Huraira. Did he have a child called Huraira? He didn't. So Abu Hafs, Umar ibn al-Khattab was called Abu Hafs not because he had a son called Hafs, but he had a daughter called Hafsa. He had a daughter called Hafsa, and this kunya is not because of the daughter. He was simply called Abu Hafs. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu قال, he said, سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam saying, إنما الأعمال بالنيات, actions are judged, or actions are rewarded according to intentions. I remember telling you that this hadith is a third of ilm according to Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah. He said the whole ilm of Islam goes back to 3 hadiths. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam has spoken many ahadith. In fact, hundreds of thousands of ahadith. But all these ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam can be summarized in three important hadiths of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, which seem to hold our deen. Our religion is based on those three ahadith. And this hadith is one of those three hadiths. In other words, if Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam did not speak any hadiths, and he spoke only three hadiths, these three hadiths would have been sufficient as the foundations of our religion. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the ability to express things in very short sentences. And yet the sentence would have massive meanings. One sentence which carries a lot of meaning. So, if religion can be summarized in three ahadith, and this hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, is one of those three ahadith on which our religion is founded, then this hadith qualifies to be a third of all knowledge in Islam, when a person understands the meaning of this hadith. But before I go into the details of the hadith, I would like to ask you which three ahadith are considered the basic foundation of knowledge in Islam. Of course, Imam Shafi'i said there are three hadiths. Some scholars said there are four hadiths. Others said we can summarize them into two hadiths. So if we say there are four hadiths which are the foundation of our religion, and this hadith is one of them, then this hadith would be a quarter of ilm. If we say there are two hadiths which are the foundation of our religion, and this hadith is one of them, then this hadith would be half of ilm. If we say there are three hadiths which are the foundation of our religion, and this hadith is one of them, then this hadith would be thuluthul ilmi, a third of ilm. These hadiths, the three hadiths, are all found in the Arba'ina An-Nawawiya, the 40 hadiths of An-Nawawi. Number one is this hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Number one, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. This is the first hadith. The second hadith, the hadith narrated by Aisha radiyallahu anha. Of course, our first hadith is narrated by Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anha. The second hadith, which is one of the foundations of our religion, is based on the hadith of Aisha radiyallahu anha, in which she said, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu fahuwa rad. Anyone who introduces in this matter of ours, or anyone who introduces in this religion of ours something which does not belong here, it will be rejected. This hadith means anything new you introduce in Islam which is not a part of our religion, something which was not taught by our messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, fahuwa radd, it will be rejected, no matter how beautiful it looks. Because the religion was completed with al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati wa raditu lakum al-islam dina. Today have I perfected your religion and completed my favor on you and chosen Islam to be your religion. So if after that someone is going to introduce something new in our religion, man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu, something which is not a part of this religion, fahuwa radd, it will be rejected. This hadith is a foundation of our deen. If you understand the meaning of the hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, and the explanation of this hadith is going to come also in the Arba'in An-Nawawiyya, this is only the beginning. You understand the meaning of the hadith, مَنْ أَحْدَثَ فِي أَمْرِنَا هَذَا مَا لَيْسَ مِنْهُ فَهُوَ رَدٌّ رواه البخاري ومسلم وفي رواية لمسلم من عمل عملا ليس عليه أمرنا فهو رد. Whoever is going to do anything that we haven't commanded, something we didn't command them to do. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam commanded us to do certain things. But if you're going to do certain things the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did not command, and consider them a part of our religion, فَهُوَ رَدٌّ. They will not be accepted. That is rejected. So the litmus paper for, or rather the acid test for anything in Islam is, are we commanded to do it? If we're not commanded to do it, then خلاص فهو رد. It can't be accepted. Any ibadah, no matter how beautiful. This is beautiful ibadah. You see, we praise Allah and we just say nice things about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The question is, are we commanded to do that? If we are not commanded, فهو رد, then it can't be accepted. The third hadith is the hadith of An-Nu'man ibn Bashir, narrated by An-Nu'man ibn Bashir radiyallahu anhu, in which he says, إِنَّ الْحَلَالَ بَيِّنٌ. Halal is clear. وَإِنَّ الْحَرَامَ بَيِّنٌ. And haram is clear. وَبَيْنَهُمَا مُشْتَبِهَاتٌ لَا يَعْلَمُهُنَّ كَثِيرٌ مِّنَ النَّاسِ. And there are certain things in the middle about which people are not sure. People don't know them. Halal is clear and haram is clear, and there are certain things which are doubtful. فَمَنِ اتَّقَى الشُّبُهَاتِ اسْتَبْرَأَ لِدِينِهِ وَعِرْضِهِ. وَمَنْ وَقَعَ فِي الشُّبُهَاتِ وَقَعَ فِي الْحَرَامِ كَالرَّاعِي يَرْعَى حَوْلَ الْحِمَى يُوشِكُ أَنْ يَرْتَعَ فِيهِ. ألا وإن لكل ملك حمى ألا وإن حمى الله محارمه ألا وإن في الجسد مضغة إذا صلحت صلح الجسد كله وإذا فسدت فسد الجسد كله ألا وهي القلب. Halal is clear and haram is clear. Stay away from the things which are not clear. That's the foundation of religion. So these three hadiths are the foundation of our religion. The first hadith, Mamadu, إنما الأعمال بالنيات. إنما الأعمال بالنيات. The second hadith, Sheikh Sulaiman, the hadith of Aisha رضي الله عنها, من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد. Whoever introduces in this matter of ours something which is outside it, فهو رد. It will not be accepted. It is rejected. And the third asl, the third foundation of our religion, the hadith of An-Nu'man bin Bashir, in which he says, إِنَّ الْحَلَالَ بَيِّنٌ. Halal is clear, وَإِنَّ الْحَرَامَ بَيِّنٌ. So, if these three ahadith, the hadith of Aisha, the hadith of Aisha, the hadith of An-Nu'man ibn Bashir, if these three are the foundations of our religion, then we say this hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, is therefore 1/3 of ilm, thuluthul ilm. Some scholars added this hadith. إِنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ يُجْمَعُ خَلْقُهُ فِي بَطْنِ أُمِّهِ 40 يَوْمًا ثُمَّ يَكُونُ عَلَقَةً مِثْلَ ذَلِكَ ثُمَّ يَكُونُ مُضْغَةً مِثْلَ ذَلِكَ ثُمَّ يُرْسَلُ إِلَيْهِ الْمَلَكُ فينفخ فيه الروح فيؤمر بأربع كلمات بكتب رزقه وأجله وعمله وشقي أو سعيد فوالذي لا إله غيره إن أحدكم ليعمل بعمل أهل النار حتى ما يكون بينه وبينها إلا ذراع فيسبق عليه الكتاب فيعمل بعمل أهل الجنة فيدخلها وإن أحدكم لا يعمل بعمل أهل الجنة حتى ما يكون بينه وبينها إلا ذراع فيسبق عليه الكتاب فيعمل بعمل أهل النار فيدخلها. This hadith is also a foundation of our religion. So if we include it as the fourth hadith, then our hadith إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ would be a quarter of ilm. What is the meaning of the hadith, the fourth hadith? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins the creation of anyone as إِنَّ أَحْدَكُمْ يُجْمَعُ خَلْقُهُ, bringing the creation together 40 يوما, 40 days. ثُمَّ يَكُونُ عَلَقَةً, then he becomes عَلَقَةً, a clot, مثل ذلك, after 40 days. ثُمَّ يَكُونُ مُضْغَةً, then he becomes مُضْغَةً, like a piece of chewed meat, 40 يوما, 40 days. Then after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends an angel, and then the angel writes for him. Firstly, he blows life into him, and then he records, firstly, his risk, and his risk, then his what? His ajal. the period of time he's going to live, then his amal, his work, and then shaqiyun am sa'id. In short, this hadith is a hadith that talks about qadar. Allah has written everything. So that's the foundation of deen, definitely. So if you look at these 4 hadiths, there's very little about deen that these 4 hadiths haven't covered. They've covered niyyah, they've covered bid'ah, man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu fahuwa radd. They've covered halal and haram and staying away from the things about which you're not sure, and they've covered qadar. That is deen. So if you know these 4 ahadith, you know them by heart, you're an alim, mashallah. You can explain the usul of deen, the foundations of deen. That's why this hadith is called thuluthul ilm. It's a third of ilm. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Works are judged by their intentions. Intention will be divided into 2. I want us to talk about these 2 things separately. Intention according to i'tiqad, belief, and then we'll talk about intention according to fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence. Because niyyah in aqidah, in our belief, in our i'tiqad, means something. And in fiqh, it means something else. When the people of Islamic jurisprudence or Sharia say niyyah, what they mean is not what the people of Tawheed mean, Aqidah. That's not what they mean when they say niyyah, they mean something else. In our belief, I'll start with i'tiqad. In Tawheed, monotheism, when we say niyyah, we're considering why you are doing what you are doing. That is the meaning of niyyah in monotheism. In monotheism, niyyah is why are you doing what you are doing? For example, salah, you are praying. Why are you praying? That is the meaning of niyyah in i'tiqad. Are you praying for Allah or are you praying for something else? If you're praying for Allah, alhamdulillah. If you're praying for something else, we say, then you can't be rewarded for it. Allah cannot reward you for your salah. So this niyyah enters every act of Islam, every aspect of our lives. Salah is according to niyyah. If a person prays for the sake of Allah, they will be rewarded. If it's not for the sake of Allah, they will not be rewarded. If a person gives zakat for the sake of Allah, he will be rewarded. If it's not for the sake of Allah, he will not be rewarded. If a person fasts for the sake of Allah, he should be rewarded by Allah. If it's for other purposes, he should not be rewarded. If a person performs Hajj for Allah, he should be rewarded. If he performs for self-esteem, so that people say he's al-Hajj, he went for Hajj, and so that the society can respect him, he will not be rewarded by Allah. So in i'tiqad, we consider the qasd. What do you want from your work? In fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence, it's different. In Islamic jurisprudence, niyyah simply means, what are you doing? I said in i'tiqad, it means, why are you doing what you are doing? That's in aqidah, in tawheed, in monotheism. But in fiqh, it means, what are you doing? For example, if you stand up to perform salah, niyyah in fiqh would mean, what salah are you praying? That is the meaning of niyyah in fiqh. So in fiqh, niyyah distinguishes between one ibadah and another. For example, Salatul Asr, how do you pray Asr? 4 rakats. Loudly or silently? Silently. And how do you pray Dhuhr? 4 rakats. Loudly or silently? Silently. So what's the difference? Niyyah. The only difference is what? The niyyah, the intention. Otherwise, dhuhr and asr are exactly the same. The only thing that distinguishes between dhuhr and asr is the niyyah. When you come into the masjid at the time of Salatul Asr and you miss Salatul Dhuhr, Asr is 4 rakats and Dhuhr is 4 rakats, and you start praying, how do we know what you're praying? Whether it's Dhuhr or Asr? They're exactly the same. What's the distinguishing factor? The niyyah, what you know inside. That's the only thing that distinguishes one ibadah from another. True or false? Salatul Fajr. Someone comes in the masjid. Maybe he comes in shortly after the Salatul Fajr has come to an end. And then he stands and prays 2 rakats. We don't know what 2 rakats he's praying. It could be the Fajr itself, or it could be the Nafilah before Salatul Fajr. What is the distinguishing factor? The niyyah. So in fiqh, niyyah is what distinguishes between one act and another. And in fiqh also, niyyah distinguishes between ibadah and adah. Ibadah means an act of worship. Adah means something that we do in our daily lives. Some adat, some things that we do in our daily lives, look exactly like the ibadat. The way you do it in daily life is exactly the way you would do it in worship. Who can give us an example of that?
Meeting your wife?
There's meeting your wife of ibadah and of ada.
I thought you said when you have...
No, there's certain things.
Oh,
There are certain things. There are certain things that we do which could either be ada or they could be ibadah. If you find me in the shower, for example, you find me in the shower. How do you know whether I'm just taking a shower because I feel hot or I'm bathing because of janaba? How are you going to know? They look the same. What is the distinguishing factor? The distinguishing factor is my niyyah. That's all. The one who has janaba goes under the shower in the same way that a person who feels hot also goes under the shower. So it's the niyyah that distinguishes ibadah from adah. It depends on the niyyah. If I decide to leave at 20 hours or 30 hours in order to go to bed. Why? Because I want to wake up early. I want to wake up for Qiyamul Layl, and I want to read Quran at night. I stand up and go to the bedroom to sleep at 30 hours. Someone else also goes to sleep at 30 hours. But for them, the reason is that they are feeling very tired. If you see us, both of us going to sleep, what is the difference? There's no difference. Is there a special walk for those who intend ibadah and a different walk for those who are going to sleep because they're tired? We all go to bed in the same manner. We sleep in the same manner. But this one is getting a reward for sleeping. This one is getting nothing for sleeping. What is the distinguishing factor? This is ibadah, this is not ibadah. How is this ibadah? This is ibadah because this one has gone to sleep because he is preparing to wake up early in the morning or to wake up at night in order to perform tahajjud. This one is going to sleep because he is tired. But the sleeping is the same. What is the distinguishing factor? The distinguishing factor is the niyyah. That is what has distinguished it. Otherwise, the way we sleep is the same. So once you understand this hadith, you will understand a lot in Islam. By understanding the hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, you understand so much in Islam. وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. And every person will be rewarded or will be given what they intended. If you intend something good, you will get something good. If your intention is something bad, you will get something bad. فَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. This is just an example. The hijrah is an example. What is hijrah? Hijrah is migration, to migrate from a land where there is no Islam to a land where there is Islam. Or it might be migration from a land where there is no security to a land of security. For example, the first hijrah, the first migration of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the companions of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrated from Mecca to Habasha. Is it because there was Islam in Habasha, in Abyssinia, in Ethiopia? They left Mecca and went to Ethiopia. There is no Islam in Ethiopia at that particular time, but they migrated from a land of no security to a land where there is security. This is considered hijrah. The second hijrah from Mecca to Medina was hijrah from a land where there is no Islam to a land where there is Islam. And hijrah remains compulsory until the day of judgment. Hijrah from Mecca to Medina ended with the Fatah. When Mecca was conquered, that was the end of the hijrah. There was no need for anyone to migrate from Mecca to Medina anymore, because Mecca also became a land of Islam. But hijrah in general, movement from a land where there is no Islam to a land of Islam, remains until the day of judgment. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, hijrah will not come to an end until tawbah comes to an end. Hijrah, migration, will not end until tawbah comes to an end. And tawbah will not end until the sun rises from the west. The day the sun is going to rise from the west, going to the east, that will be the end of tawbah, and it should be the end of hijrah. So hijrah up to this day remains. A person should seek to migrate from a land where he feels his Islam is not secure to a land where he feels he is free to practice Islam. Today the Muslims have neglected this and they're busy doing the opposite. Migrating from a land where he's able to freely practice Islam to a land where he will be restricted. In countries like ours, alhamdulillah, it's not an Islamic country, but the things are not as bad as they are in Europe and the United States. When you go to Europe, you go to the United States, it's very, very difficult for you to control your children, especially the daughters. The rights, the issues surrounding hijab and things like that, it's almost impossible to control your daughter. And then a Muslim decides he's going to migrate from a land where his daughter can wear hijab to a land where his daughter is not allowed to wear hijab. This hijrah is not Islamic hijrah. In fact, it's the opposite of the Islamic hijrah. A Muslim must try to move his family if there is a possibility. I know it's difficult nowadays. You don't just go to any country you want to go to. But where there is a possibility, if you can go to a country where you can practice Islam better and your daughters are allowed to wear hijab, it's much better to go to such a place. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in this hadith gives hijrah as an example. فَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. The one who makes hijrah to Allah and His Messenger, فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Then his hijrah is to Allah and His Messenger. What is the meaning of this? Why repeating the same things? He that makes hijrah to Allah and His Messenger has made hijrah to Allah and His Messenger. Is that sensible? Saying he that goes to town has gone to town. Is that the way to speak? There's something hidden in the sentence. The one who makes hijrah to Allah and His Messenger in intention, فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, then his hijrah is to Allah and His Messenger in reward. What's missing? In reward and in intention. In other words, if your intention is to migrate for the sake of Allah and for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, then you will get the reward of a person who migrates for the sake of Allah and migrates for the sake of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. وَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ لِلدُّنْيَا. As for the one who migrates for the world, businessman, The one who migrates for the world is called a what? Businessman. أو امرأة ينكحها, or the one looking for a woman to marry. A person could migrate because he wants to make money. Or he could migrate because there is a woman to marry. They tell you I heard it those days, that joke about Eritrea. They said in Eritrea, they've now allowed, what was that? Women? It became compulsory for men, although I don't know how accurate that was, but they said it was compulsory for men to marry, how many? 4 wives. If you don't marry 4, you'll be put in prison, and then someone migrates very quickly to go to Eritrea in order to marry. فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى مَا هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِ. Then his ijra is to what he has migrated for. And look, هِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. The Messenger ﷺ repeats it. He says, فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. His hijrah is to Allah and His Messenger. وَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ لِلدُّنْيَا يُصِيبُهَا أَوْ امْرَأَةٍ يَنْكِحُهَا. He doesn't say, فَهِجْرَتُهُ لِلدُّنْيَا أَوْ امْرَأَةٍ يَنْكِحُهَا. He says, فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى مَا هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِ. His hijrah is to the things he has migrated for, because they're not important. They don't merit mentioning. They don't even deserve to be mentioned. وَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ لِلدُّنْيَا يُصِيبُهَا أَوْ امْرَأَةٍ يَنْكِحُهَا فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى مَا هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِ.